Thank you so much. Thank you. Hi. So that was the first work I ever did in animation. That was my reel from many, many years ago. And I know that you probably all know me more for this guy, Kung Fu Panda. But I'd like to talk about all my work today. And primarily, I want to talk about my latest film, The Little Prince. Now, this is a movie that has been released here. It's been released all over the world. It still hasn't been released in a few territories, including the US. So it's really an incredible opportunity to come and talk to you all about this film. Of course, this film is based on this incredible book written more than 70 years ago by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, an amazing French writer and pilot. And if you don't know this book, it's been translated into 260 different languages, and it's been estimated that it's the most read book next to the Bible. So a lot of people know this book really, really well. This is the copy of the book that I've had in my life for more than 25 years, and it was a very important book to me. The book is filled with magic, and I never could have imagined that I could make a movie out of this book. I don't think I ever could have conceived of it, but about 6.5 years ago, I was asked if I wanted to think about turning this book into a movie. And to kick things off, I'm going to show you the trailer, if you haven't seen it or you haven't seen the movie. The trailer gives you a sense of what we did in our adaptation. And if you don't know the book, it's okay. We made the movie for people whether they knew the book or not. It's intended to be a celebration of the book, but it also can act as an introduction to the book. So why don't we go ahead and watch the trailer.
You're going to be a Worth Academy graduate because I've designed a plan. Your life plan. The hour of the day of the week of the month of the year of your life. We're not leaving anything to chance.
Oh, here I am, up here.
You are going to make a wonderful grown-up.
Thank you, Mom. I just wanted to give your drawing back.
Didn't like it?
No, I did. Once upon a time, there was a little prince who lived on a planet that was scarcely bigger than himself.
I thought I'd never find anyone who wanted to hear my story.
If you please, draw me a sheep. What was a kid doing there in the desert? There was no mention of life on any other planets.
An asteroid B612.
You are the everland.
Wow.
And the little prince,
One world away.
he was very fond of sunsets.
I'll make believe in while I'm wide awake. Did you finish your study work?
Not exactly. I made a friend.
If you study hard and you stay completely on track with the plan, you can spend some time with your new friend next summer.
Look at that. The stars are out.
Hey, come and play with me.
I cannot play with you. I'm not tamed. But if you tame me, then we shall need each other. To me, you will be unique in all the world. What is essential is invisible to the eye.
When the moment does come for me to leave, I have to go alone.
Do you know how to fly a plane? Buckle up. I'm not so sure I want to grow up anymore.
Growing up is not the problem. Forgetting it. You're gonna make a wonderful grown-up.
Thanks. Thanks. So if you know the book, you can see by the trailer even that this adaptation is not just a straightforward adaptation of the book. It's got a little more to it, and you might ask why? Like, why? And if you know the book, you'd know that the book is not really movie-shaped. In fact, it's quite the opposite. It's like a poem, and it's very slight. And if you know the book really well, you'd also love the book very much. People who know the book love the book, and you wouldn't want it to be hurt in any way. And that's how I felt. When I was first asked to make this book into a movie, I said it was impossible. And I said no. But I'll get into that a little bit more. I want to go all the way back to the beginning, even earlier than my CalArts reel. And I'm going to give you a little bit of a sense of sort of the destiny and how my life led up to making this film. This is actually me at age 5. I'm holding a camera, and I'm wearing an aviator's hat. And my crew thinks this is photoshopped. They think this is fake. They don't believe it's true, but it is true. And I found this when I was in production. I was like, oh, this is really weird. This is like destiny. This is actually me at age 7. And I was 7 years old when the first Star Wars movie came out. And so that's an inflatable lightsaber, and Star Wars changed my life. It changed the way my brain worked. It opened up my imagination, and I became obsessed with it. And by the time The Empire Strikes Back came out, I was 10 years old, and it was my entire childhood. And I started to get a sense at this point that there were people that were making this stuff, and it wasn't real. When I was 7, I thought it was real. And so I think this is really what put me on the path of wanting to make films. Many years later, when I was 19, I ended up going to art school in Brooklyn, New York, called Pratt Institute. And that's where I really started to fall in love with animation. But I was also falling in love with the person who gave me this copy of the book. This very special person, her name is Kim, and this is actually a photo of us on our second date. This is like more than 25 years ago. And she gave me her copy of the book because she wanted me to have it, and the book became incredibly special to me. She wanted me to have it because when I got interested in animation, I got accepted into the animation program at CalArts. And it was all the way across the United States and California, and I was very nervous I didn't want to be apart from her. I didn't want to be separated at all. I was very scared of going on this new adventure. And she gave me the book and said, you know, the book would keep us close together. And she was right, it did. In fact, there's a quote in the book that really kind of gives you the sense of it. This quote is, "It is only with the heart that one can see rightly. What is essential is invisible to the eye." And that really represented sort of the heart of the book, and the idea that even if we were apart, we could still be together. And with that, I went off to CalArts, and that encouragement and this bond of this book keeping us close together, it really made a huge difference for me. And when I got to CalArts, I explored all different kinds of animation. And as you saw in my reel, that was all done in my first year at CalArts. I explored everything. And then eventually I started making a film using primarily stop-motion animation. I loved all different kinds of animation, and I started making a film that mixed stop-motion with hand-drawn animation, and I also used live action. And for that, I put a rubber mask on, I painted my body green, and I became the main character of my film for the ending. And we shot in a swimming pool. It was the stupidest thing I've ever done. It was really an experiment. The film is called Greener, and I really thought it was a disaster. The whole time I was making this film, I just wanted it to be over with, and I didn't know what I was doing. I was learning by trial and error. But amazingly, this film went on to win prizes at film festivals, and it screened at over 40 film festivals, and it got a lot of exposure, and I didn't expect it at all. And I realized the power of having a finished film. Even if it's not perfect, Having something finished is important. Eventually, I wanted to make another personal film, another short film, and that's when I actually returned to CalArts as a teacher. And I started to make my second film called More during the summer there, and I was using faculty access to equipment and space. And I started working in stop motion again. I was using much bigger sets this time. I had much bigger camera. I was shooting actually on IMAX format. And I was also mixing techniques. I did stop motion, and I did some 2D hand-drawn animation mixed in. And this film ended up getting me nominated for an Academy Award for Best Animated Short. And it went on to screen at over 150 film festivals. And I couldn't believe it, you know, and I went from working with a tiny crew like this, and then I got the opportunity to work on a crew of this size. And this isn't even everybody. This is about 2/3 of the crew for the first Kung Fu Panda movie. I'm over here somewhere. And it was an incredible opportunity to make the leap from shorts to features. I co-directed the original Kung Fu Panda with a guy named John Stevenson. He's there too. And it was an extraordinary experience because we went from this and we had this incredible opportunity to make a martial arts movie that was a tribute to films that we loved. This was sort of the one that we held up as this is the most, I think, widely seen martial arts film in the US, but there were many other films that inspired us greatly. And we really wanted to create something really special and unique and something that reminded us of the films that we loved. And also we wanted to create something that was going to be true to the history and the culture and the architecture and the landscapes of China. We really wanted to create something that was a tribute. And there's amazing artwork that we could also draw upon, and we did. We wanted to make something that felt very much a tribute to the culture here. And it was incredible to see that the film ended up turning into something quite unique and quite special, and to have the film be received so well here and to live on has really been extraordinary and an extraordinary lesson, because we were paying tribute to something very important to you all, and that was to take this panda and take this genre and take this culture, and we really wanted to do something unique and special. So I learned a lot from that. And so I'm going to jump back to the bigger story. You remember this girl? Remember the book? Remember how special? Okay. Well, by this point, we were married. Yeah, I know. And it gets better. We had 2 beautiful children. Yeah. And that copy of the book that Kim gave me became the copy of the book that we read to them. And it was still a part of our lives. And that's why when I got the phone call about 6.5 years ago, and the phone call said, "Do you want to make a big CG animated movie out of this book?" I said no. And I was approached by 2 French producers who had gotten the rights from the Antoine de Saint-Exupéry estate to make the movie. But when I heard that they wanted to make a big CG movie, I said it's impossible. So I said no. And then I couldn't stop thinking about it. And I couldn't stop thinking about how special the book was and how much it made an impact in my life and how powerful it was. And I started to see this as maybe a chance to honor the book and to somehow protect the book by making a movie. And it was a very difficult thing to figure out, but I really started thinking about this quote again. "It is only with the heart that one can see rightly what is essential is invisible to the eye." This meant so much to me, and it had meant so much to me over the past 25 years that I started to dream of this idea of building a movie around the book, around this quote, and that we could actually build from something really substantial. So this became an opportunity that I couldn't pass up. And I didn't say yes right away because I knew it was going to be a challenge to figure out how to create something. And I started to think about a larger story around the book that would be about the power of the book. And so I started thinking outside the box. I really wanted to come up with something unique. The book is so unique, I wanted the movie to be a cinematic equivalent. And I started thinking about my daughter, Maddie. And this is the age she was at the time when I was thinking about it. And I started to think about a character like her that could be the one who's going to read the book, and we're going to then sort of see the book through her eyes, through her imagination. So this was an exciting idea that I thought could help protect the book even more. The book comes alive in the mind of the reader, so I really needed to find a story that would help express this. The other person I thought of very early on was this guy. I know. So I thought of him because I love his films. They're a huge inspiration to me and to everybody that I know working in animation. But tonally, the way Miyazaki combines fantasy and reality has always been an inspiration, and that was the tone that I wanted to match for The Little Prince. So I also thought about him because he loves The Little Prince. He says this is his favorite book of all time, and so I knew the pressure that I had on me to come up with an idea for the movie that I would hope that someone like him could appreciate. And so I had all the pressure of, all the French people. It's a national treasure, this book, in France. But I also had to make sure that I would make something that Miyazaki-san would also appreciate. And so I treaded very carefully, and I wanted to really try to find a way to adapt the soul of the book as much as possible so that people who really love the book could appreciate the film. And that's actually when I choked. I gave up. I couldn't figure it out, and I stopped, and I had no ideas. And I was going to give up completely, and then I found out that the last person who tried to make a movie out of this book was Orson Welles. And Orson Welles owned the rights back in 1943, back before the book was ever even published. And it was going to be his follow-up to Citizen Kane. And I never knew this, and it blew my mind. He wrote 4 screenplays, and he was going to make this movie, but he couldn't find the funding, he couldn't figure out how to do it, and so he had to stop. So I thought, I'll just get his screenplays, and I'll use his screenplays. And I imagined that every screenplay he wrote had a different, larger story around the book. It took about 2 weeks to get the screenplays. They were protected, and they were kind of hidden away. And when I finally got those screenplays, they were actually just the book. There was nothing else added, and so there was nothing I could use. And I was quite devastated. And I didn't know what to do. But then I started realizing I had 2 weeks of fantasies of what Orson Welles might have come up with. And so I started to use all these ideas that I had that I was hoping I would find in his scripts, and I started to build based on those ideas. Another thing that happened that was a huge inspiration to me was I got to visit the Morgan Library in New York City, where the original drawings and the original manuscript pages for the book are located. I got invited there by Olivier Daguet, who's the director of the estate. He's the nephew of Saint-Exupéry's nephew. And he got me access to see the original drawings. And they were handmade, scribbly. They were so artistic. They were obviously a work of art, and they were very fragile. This drawing in particular really made an impact on me because he had crumpled it up and thrown it in the garbage. And his assistant had salvaged it and saved it. And it was so fragile, and it was so ephemeral. And that's one of the themes of the book, that I knew this was a huge inspiration for me. So I started thinking this story was in danger of never existing. It was this fragile work of art, and that started to really help inspire me. And I started to look at all the illustrations. I started to really study them, and I studied the book deeply. And I found a lot of clues in the book, a lot of small things that helped me understand how we could make this larger movie. And I wanted to have everything born out of the book as much as possible. And this is actually a quote from the book. The aviator says, "I don't want my book to be taken lightly," so I didn't. And I asked everybody who joined the project to not take it lightly. We had to be very serious about this. And I realized that we couldn't just make these drawings move. We had to go beyond the drawings. We had to find a reality that was beyond, that would match up to the reality that everyone creates in their own imagination when they read the book. And that's when I decided we'd start the story the same way the book begins, by showing you the first drawing that the aviator made when he was 6 years old. And at 6 years old, he was misunderstood. And then I wanted to reveal that he's now 86 years old, and he's still misunderstood. And in fact, he's never found anybody who he could share the story with, and the book has never been published, and it's in danger of dying along with him. Now he's a very old man. And so we created this high-concept world that is very grown up, and the aviator kind of lives as a special character in that world. He's like in a bubble. And he has been inspired by meeting the little prince, and he has this incredible story to tell, but he has nobody to tell it to. So we've got these great character drawings by Peter DeSève. And we eventually got to hire Jeff Bridges to create this incredible voice. And this is what he first looked like in CG. And next door to him, we had the little girl move in. So she moves into this house, and she looks like a little kid, but she's actually not a little kid. She's more like a little grown-up. So she's 9 years old, going on 39. And she really needs the story of the little prince in her life, because she's never really had a childhood. And the only relationship she has in her life is more like a business relationship between her and her mom. And even, she doesn't have a story like the little prince in her life. The only document she has is this thing called the life plan that you got a sense of in the trailer. So it's like the opposite of the book. It's the opposite of poetry. And the whole world is designed to echo the life plan, and the life plan echoes the world. And it's very stressful for her, and so we see her at the beginning of the movie. She's not coping very well. But she's trying to be a good little grown-up, and she's working very hard, and that's when she's going to get this gift from next door, from the aviator. And this gift, as you can see, is very much inspired by those original manuscript pages, those very fragile, handwritten pages. And that starts to create the idea of maybe there is this other world, and this magical world that the aviator has to offer starts calling to her. And soon, when she gets the courage to kind of enter that world, she's going to get rewarded, not only with the story of the little prince, but she's going to get rewarded with this incredibly warm relationship that's going to develop between her and the aviator. This was one of the earliest pieces of concept art that was created that really captured the soul of the relationship between these characters and the warmth of the relationships in the original book. And that brings out a major theme in the movie and in the book, which is the importance of relationships. And every time the little girl's going to hear the story or see a drawing, it's going to inspire her, and her imagination is going to get carried away, and we're going to see the story in her mind. And so that's sort of the second high concept for the movie, and it's how we really protect the book. We don't show you the book. We show you her version of the book. So it's the way she sees the story. So if it's different than the way you see it, it's okay, because she's another person. But, kind of. So that's the goal. The goal was to make it a conversation with a friend. And the world of the little prince is the glue. That's the thing that holds it all together. So we're inspired by this old yellow paper that she's reading the story on, and that is what triggers this other idea that we are actually going to use paper to create that world. And all of the sequences of the book are actually created out of paper, and they're executed in beautiful, handmade, stop-motion animation. And this was a very crazy idea, but it was one of the big ideas that, for me, made it possible. Just so you can get a sense of the scale of the characters, this is Alex Uhas, who was the production designer and character designer for the stop motion, creating the puppets. This is Corinne Merrill. She's working on the sand dunes. She was the art director. The sand dunes are all made out of paper, too. And this is the core team behind the stop motion, including this guy. His name's Jamie Caleri. And Jamie was my co-director on these sequences and really did a brilliant job of bringing them to life in a very imaginative way. We also have Anthony Scott, who is he's the head animator for the stop motion sequences. And just to give you a sense, Anthony did this shot of the tunnel that the plane flies into. It's all made out of paper. This is a shot that Anthony did. It's one of the most extraordinary shots in the film, and it represents one of the big ideas from the book, this idea that the Little Prince's planet is so small he can see the sunrise and the sunset basically almost in the same moment. And just to give you a sense of the magic and the work that goes into this, if you don't know, this is what goes into a stop-motion shot. And it took Anthony about 6 days to pull this shot off. Yeah. So this is pure magic. This is the rest of the stop-motion crew. Again, it's not everybody, but it's a good chunk of the stop-motion crew. This is the CG team. We were based in Montreal for production. Both stop-motion and CG were based in Montreal. And again, this is probably about 2/3 of the team for the CG. This is them at work, but it's not as interesting as the stop-motion studio. And this is actually the team in Paris. The interesting thing about the project is we were in Paris for 2 years of pre-production. And this was the wrap party right at the end of our pre-production in Paris. And a lot of these artists ended up moving with us to Montreal to finish the production in Montreal. This is another very important group of people in the project. These are the Fantastic Four. These are Antoine de Saint-Exupéry's nieces and nephews. They're the eldest members of the estate, and they're the ones that are in charge of the estate, and I had to convince them that the movie that I wanted to make was going to take care of the book and protect the book. And when I pitched the project to them, they fell in love with it, they got it right away, and they were so happy that I was not just doing a straight adaptation. And they gave me their full support, which was extraordinary. They were really excited about this one concept in particular of many, but we took the character of the fox, which is a very important character in the book, and we actually made the fox really important in the larger story as well. We turned the fox into a stuffed animal that the old aviator makes and gives to the little girl as a symbol of their relationship and as a symbol of the fox from the book. So this is what we designed, and this is what he looks like in CG. But more importantly, this is what he looks like. For real. This is the model that we built so that everybody could understand what the fox should look like and feel like. And maybe now you understand why I said we'll take photos after my presentation, if you want. So I'm going to put him here. He's good. Thanks. But really, all over the world, people who love the book, and even Saint-Exupéry's own family, appreciated that the characters from the story were in the movie, but we also created new characters that were going to help express the themes and ideas of the story. They were going to echo the characters from the story. And we were extending the universe outwards, but everything was born out of elements from the book. And it was really important to really keep the book as the core of the movie. Even in this broken relationship, this relationship also expresses really important ideas from the book. And with these new characters and new relationships, we could actually echo and reflect the themes from the book in a new and interesting way. But mainly, the most important thing we wanted to do was we wanted to capture the magic of the book. We wanted to allow that magic to live in the cinematic universe of the film that we were creating. And we wanted the magic of the book and the fact that it was French when it was originally created. There's a lot of Frenchness that we wanted to create and keep in the film so that we were constantly reminded of the French origin of this story. But most importantly, we wanted to establish that this was a film about relationships, just like the book was about relationships, and that it's about learning to see with the heart. Because meaningful relationships must be maintained even when you can't always be together. That was my experience with the book, and that's how I knew that this would be a major part of the movie. This is actually me, my wife, and my 2 kids. This is when we were living in Paris at the time when we were making the film. And that was like a dream come true. To live in Paris and make The Little Prince into a movie was incredible. It was more evidence that the book is magic. And this is actually another piece of evidence. This is the Cannes Film Festival premiere with the lovely Mackenzie Foy, who is the voice of the little girl, Marion Cotillard, who's the voice of the Rose, with her back to us. And this is my son Riley, and the reason why Riley is wearing a tuxedo and he's on the red carpet is because Riley is actually the voice of the Little Prince in the finished version of the movie. And in the beginning stages of making an animated movie, you don't have your actors, and everybody who's around is recording voices. And my daughter was the voice of the little girl, my wife was the voice of the mother, I was the old aviator, and Riley was 11, and he was the Little Prince. Everybody loved the sound of his voice, they loved the sound of his laughter, and we weren't allowed to remove him ever. And so it's incredible to me that he's in the finished version of the movie, and so to me, that is a huge part of the magic. To go one step further, this is me with my 2 French producers, and that is right after we won the César, which is the Oscar for France. We won the César for the Best Animated Feature Film for 2015. This just happened recently, not very long ago, and it was an incredible moment of validation for the film in France. Not only did we premiere at the Cannes Film Festival, and not only did I have the full support of Saint-Exupéry's family, but we won this incredible award that was a huge amount of validation for the entire crew that helped to make this movie a reality. And I'll leave you with one last piece of evidence about just how magic the book is. When I was moving back after we lived in Paris, I discovered an old letter in my files. And this was the letter that Kim wrote to me when I was scared about maybe going to CalArts. I didn't want to be without her. And I was terrified at the idea of having to move all the way across the country away from her. And she wrote this incredible letter that said, pursue your dream, go study animation, this is like what you should be doing. She said, we'll always be together. And the letter ends with, it is only with the heart that one can see rightly what is essential is invisible to the eye. And I found this letter recently, and I just broke down in tears. I couldn't believe that significant letter that helped push me to go and study animation closed with this quote. I knew the quote was significant, I knew the book was significant, but I had forgotten just how pivotal it was in my life. And so that is how I know that the book is magic. And I hope that if you haven't seen the film, that someday you'll see it and you'll find that there's magic in the film as well. Thanks very much.